Reduce the face amount, right, if that's available. Maybe even take reduce paid up if that's available. Right? All of those things are potential possibilities that if the agent had interacted, he would have been better able to serve the Mallories instead of getting them on the hook, or instead of them being on the hook for a nearly $50,000 tax bill after the tax court case. So that's that one. Let's talk about Section 1035 exchanges.
So what happened to the agent?
What's that?
What happened to the agent?
What happened to their agent? The case didn't tell us anything at all about their agent. And the agent's probably glad about that. What's a Section 1035 exchange?
Trade.
It's a trade, right? What is Section 1035? Right, it's a provision of the tax code, right? And what does that code section say? It says you can trade a life insurance policy for another life insurance policy or an annuity, right? A non-qualified annuity. You can trade a life insurance policy for another life insurance policy or an annuity without recognizing an income tax result on the trade. Make sense? Right? So why would somebody do a Section 1035 exchange? When would they do it?
Well, if they had sold another policy that the expense charges were going up and taken away from the current value of the plan, then they could exchange that. If he was in good health, it was to his advantage, possibly use that money to roll into another life insurance plan for more coverage. Sometimes less premium, sometimes pay it up.
Yeah, nicely summarized. So you've got an existing older policy, maybe doesn't have some of the features of the newer policies, right? Maybe the cost structure isn't terrific, but it's done okay. Might be the policy owner paid $100 grand for it, it's now worth $150 grand, right? The policy owner might say, hey, let's trade this policy for a new fancy one, right? And let's get a bigger death benefit as part of the trade. That's perfectly fine, that works. If the policy owner surrendered the old contract, the policy owner would have to pay income tax, in my example, on 50 grand a gain, right? But if the policy owner does a 1035 exchange, they'd have to pay income tax. It's just the basis in the new contract is 100 grand. Great, thank you. That's a terrific example. Now, I answer phone calls for a living, right? I get phone calls from agents all the time. And a lot of times, the agent phone call goes something like this. Linus, I've got an existing policy owner that has paid $100,000 for his current policy. The policy's got $25,000 of surrender value, and there's a $120,000 loan against the contract. Okay? So can I do a 1035 exchange? And so what's the answer? The answer is yes, you can do a 1035 exchange. What's the downside? The IRS has this special rule that when you do a 1035 exchange, and if the loan disappears as part of the 1035 exchange, the loan that disappears is taxable. And it's worse than that. How is it worse? It gets taxed on the gain part first. So in my example, where I imagined a $120,000 loan balance, $25,000 of cash value, and a $100,000 basis, how much gain is in that contract? Linus, I didn't know that was going to be that. So, loan balance 120, cash value 25. That's 145, right, together? That's gross cash value of 145,000. Basis, 100 grand. How much gain is that? 45, right? So if the loan disappears, the $120,000 loan disappears as part of the 1035 exchange, what's the client going to pay income tax on?
45,000.
45.
45 grand, yeah, no, exactly, that's right. And so, client gets the 1099 from the carrier, and he comes back to you and says, well, wait a minute, I thought you said this was going to be a tax-free exchange. Yeah, don't be that guy, don't be that girl, don't be that person, right? Because you want to tell your client on the front end, where the client's got a loan against the policy, look, we got to deal with this, right? So there's a lot of ways to screw up 1035 exchanges, that's one of them. Right? If you don't tell your client about the idea of taxable boot, that's what that is. I'm not Canadian. Taxable boot, right? Your client's going to be tipped because the client's going to get a 1099 when the exchange happens. Go ahead.
There are companies out there that work that will let them 1035 the cash and loan over.
That's right. It's a great point. There are still carriers out there that do what we used to call a loan exchange program, where you take a policy that's got an existing loan against it and trade it for a new policy with a new loan that's at least as big as the old one. And there are a couple of private letter rulings from the IRS that said that that's a valid 1035 exchange and no taxable boot is involved. That's the good news. The bad news is the carriers hate it. Carriers hate doing that, because it's really, really labor intensive to pull that off, right? They don't, a lot of them don't have the systems to make that work very well. And so you got to check with your carriers to find out whether that's an option available to you, where you got somebody who's got a policy in trouble. Anyway, that's one of the ways to screw up 1035 exchanges. What are some other ways? Got a call this morning from somebody who said, got this business-owned annuity contract, and we want to trade it for a 1035 exchange for a personal annuity. Can't do it. Why can't we do it? Can't change owners as part of a 1035 exchange. It's not a valid 1035 exchange. 30 years ago, or 25 years ago, we used to have what we call the substitution of insured program, where one corporate-owned policy would be exchanged for a new corporate-owned policy on the next key person, right? We'd switch insureds as part of that process. IRS said that doesn't work either. You can't change insureds and have a valid 1035 exchange, which is one of the reasons that you can't go from single life coverage to second to die and have a valid 1035. So there are lots of ways to screw up 1035 exchanges. I want to talk about quickly, because I know we're running out of time, I want to talk quickly about one specific court case where there was a hidden problem with a 1035 exchange. And this case underscores the importance with certain kinds of products in particular variable life products, where you really closely pay attention to what's going on during the 1035 exchange process. In this situation, the trustee of an irrevocable life insurance trust sent in an application to Pacific Life to replace a Pac Life policy with a Hancock policy. And by the way, I'm not on the case of these carriers. It could just as easily have been any other carrier, right? Just happened to be these two. Hancock sends on September 8, 2008, Hancock sends a Section 1035 exchange request to Pac Life. Pac Life receives the request and the policy's cash value, remember this is variable life, policy's cash value is $780,000. In a bit of foreshadowing, let me ask this question. Why am I stressing that this is variable life, and why are these dates important? Minor correction in the market. So September 8th, 2008, just before all hell broke out, did I say that out loud? All heck broke loose. The ILIT trustee is worried about the market correction, and they start the 1035 exchange paperwork. So a Pac Life employee gets the 1035 assignment request. So it's being processed, and the Pac Life employee decides that it's not good enough because the trust officer, an officer of the bank, that is the ILIT trustee, did not have a corporate seal or a notarization of the signature on the form. So Pac Life decides that the request to send the money over is not good enough. She sends 2 letters out and sends them out regular mail. And the long and the short of it is the bank doesn't really find out about the problem until 3 weeks later. So in the meantime, during that 3-week period, the stock market crashes. Trust officer discovers the mistake. The policy's cash value is 56 grand less. So in December, when stuff actually gets done, the downside is actually 260 grand less. And so the trustee sues Pac Life over the rejection of the Section 1035 paperwork. Ultimately, this case went to jury, and they decided that Pac Life's refusal to process the 1035 exchange paperwork in a timely manner was wrong, and they awarded the damages that the ILIT trustee was asking for. So the result was pretty good, except that, and I'll get you in a second, Charles. The result's pretty good, except that lawyers got involved, and that's expensive, and it's uncertain. And that's never a good way for somebody to go. And so the question I'll ask you after I take Charles' question, the question I'm going to ask you is, what could an agent involved in that process, what could an agent have done to prevent that result from happening? Go ahead.
Exactly my comment. Why didn't the bank move the money to this free money market, knowing that a 1035 exchange takes 3 to 7 weeks, depending upon the period?
Yeah. So that's exactly right, Charles. So thank you for anticipating that as well. Charles's comment was, well, why not move it to the money market account? Why not move the funds from the market to the money market account inside the BUL contract first, and then do the 1035 exchange, right?
Well, what if the market would have went up 30%?
That's part of the risk. You tell that to the client up front. Do you want to lock in the current value or not?
Well, and there's a reason why the ILIT trustee decided that moving from BUL to a different product was a good idea, right? And so I don't think it's too far of a stretch to think that they were worried about the downside of the market. And so, Charles, I think your observation is right on target. If an agent was doing a good job, the agent first would have moved the safe money inside the product and then processed the 1035 paperwork under this particular set of facts. So the lesson for you is, if you're dealing with circumstances like this, and you've got a client with whom you're working that is interested in doing a 1035 exchange, be aware of this problem, be aware of other processing problems, stay on the cases, be aware of the other issues that might come up in conjunction with 1035 exchanges. Yeah.
I had a client one time, 1035 money, and it was a loan involved, and they never got a 1099 from the insurance company. So they called me, and we were expecting so much, but I didn't know what to say. I said, well, okay. But somebody then told me the companies report that to the IRS anyway, whether you get a 1099 or not. So I didn't even know what to say in that situation.
Well, they're supposed to report it on 1099.
Okay.
They're supposed to. And so I think it's fair to say that the IRS gets a copy of all 1099s. So it's their obligation to do the reporting. The client certainly should get a 1099. And if you know of a circumstance where your customer didn't get one, you should ask for one. You know, just because if one wasn't produced, you got a chance of getting one wrong later on, right? So I think you want to be proactive about that kind of thing. So let me close, let me get to the fourth thing, and I know I've only got a couple minutes left. Let me get to the fourth thing, which is one of my, kind of my pet things. It's beneficiary designations. When I was a lawyer, and acting, I still am a lawyer, but when I was acting as a lawyer, working with high net worth people, when I would take a look at their beneficiary designations, from my perspective, I found flaws in their beneficiary designations about half the time when I was working with them. Some people are startled by that. What do you think the most common mistake was when I was working with somebody and I saw their beneficiary designation and I found it was flawed?
No contingents or no reserve.
Yeah, so estate as beneficiary is the big category that I'm getting at. Either there's no beneficiary named or there's no contingent named. And if there was no contingent named, for most carriers, that means the estate is the beneficiary. What's the downside of the estate being the beneficiary? Of life insurance, annuities, IRAs, whatever it is. What's the downside of the estate being the beneficiary? You gotta go through probate. What's wrong with something going through probate? Lawyers are involved.
Nothing if you're an attorney.
And time, expense, publicity, all of that stuff. And the money that goes through probate is potentially available to creditors. Right? Whereas if you've got a named beneficiary getting the money directly, the decedent's creditors don't get to intervene to try to get at the money. Right? So estate as beneficiary is the biggest problem that I see. What else do I see as a problem with beneficiary designations?
Ex-spouse.
Ex-spouse, somebody usually, maybe not always with personal experience, but somebody usually brings that up. Somebody forgot to update their beneficiary designation to take out their ex-spouse. And there are a lot of court cases where the ex-spouse is the beneficiary. This case is about a current spouse not being a beneficiary, and we'll talk about that, but leaving ex-spouse as a beneficiary is a problem. What else? Go ahead.
I've had attorneys actually tell their clients to have the primary beneficiary, the contingent beneficiary, the IRS, be their trust.
Yeah. Charles, attorneys don't understand what we know, right? Now, I'm not saying every attorney doesn't understand, but a lot of lawyers that don't deal with the same issues that we deal with just aren't capable of knowing all the nuances that we have to deal with stretch, with liability, with probate, and with all of the issues associated with naming the estate to beneficiary. And so you could probably, if the attorney's coachable, and I know that's an if, right? If the attorney's coachable, you can probably get a really tight relationship with a lawyer if you can explain to a lawyer why that's a bad idea and explain it in a way that helps him understand he's avoiding liability, right? So I'll give you that for whatever it's worth, but you're exactly right. There's a lot of bad information out there about that kind of thing. Other common mistake that I see, little kids. Little kids, right? Little kids is beneficiaries, right? A lot of times where we got young married couple, they're going to name spouse as the first beneficiary, they're going to name their little kids as the second beneficiary. What's the problem with little kids as their beneficiaries? If they're young, right? That's right. If they're young, when they're entitled to the money, they can't get at it. Somebody's got to go to court and get permission to act on their behalf. That process is expensive, cha-ching, right? More lawyers involved. The court usually won't let the family member be real flexible on how it is they use the money on the minor's behalf. And so, that could be a real downside in terms of hassle and expense. And so that's wrong. And I also see situations where the words aren't right. You know, the words aren't right. Some of you mentioned prosterpes. I don't like using Latin, even though I understand what prosterpes means, and you're right, that it can be used in a lot of situations. I'm not a big fan of using Latin in beneficiary designations. I'm in favor of you using an extra piece of paper to write down clearly what the client has in mind. Why? So the client can understand what you're putting down too. Right? So the client knows that the words that are down on paper is really what it is the client has in mind. So thank you for putting up with that lecture from me. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity for all of us to work with our customers. We can serve them really well by taking a little extra time on life insurance, annuity, financial product applications, where we can take a little time with the beneficiary designation to really tease out what the client has in mind. And also, as we're meeting with somebody new, I think it's a terrific thing for us to encourage them to let us review the beneficiary designation. First of all, for what might have been done wrong at the beginning, and second, for what might have changed since the beginning, right? Divorce or somebody dying. Let's talk a little bit about the Bays versus Kiphart case. Got John Bays married to Carol Kiphart in 2000. They had one child. Carol buys a life insurance policy, $125,000 for Prudential. She names John the beneficiary. She buys another policy, $750,000. She names John 80% and their son 20% beneficiary. 2006, Carol gets diagnosed with cancer. Apparently, things are not all great in paradise. 2007, without John knowing about it, Carol executes a will that disinherits John. She creates two trusts, a living trust and an irrevocable trust for her son. And she names these trusts as beneficiaries of her life insurance policy. She takes John off the beneficiary designation. 2007, Carol dies. Her sister submits the new will for probate. And most states have kind of provision in them that if the spouse has been disinherited, the spouse can say no take and get a share of the probate asset from the deceased spouse. And that's what John did here. He wanted to say no take. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to get part of the life insurance proceeds. And the bottom line is the court said no way. Carol had the absolute right to change the beneficiary designation on these policies. John, you are out of luck. This case is a Kentucky case. The result may have been different elsewhere. It might have been different in a community property state. Hard to know. Hard to know exactly how this case would have turned out. But the bottom line is you've got an opportunity to serve your clients when they're sick and help them think through all the issues with regard to beneficiary designations. So we're not going to talk about any of that. So we talked about 4 things that I think you can use right away when you get out of here. First of all, you can tell your clients that have the right fit, split dollars back in fashion, right? Talk to them specifically about split dollar plans. The second thing is that you can talk to your clients about the greater use of permanent life insurance and how great cash value growth and tax-free access to cash is available, but you got to keep your contract in force, right? The third thing is that you can help them think through the Section 1035 exchange process. You can make sure the process is moving smoothly and that there's nothing unexpected that hits the client as part of that process. And the last thing is that you can help your clients by either taking time with them to get the beneficiary designation right or review their beneficiary designations with them, and you can really serve them because the beneficiary designation controls for a lot of our clients more than half of their liquid wealth in the event of death. So taking some time and effort there to make sure the payout happens in the right way is exactly the right thing to do. You can access our service, if it will be helpful to you, at Advanced Underwriting Consultants through North American. The toll-free number is 888-899-5600. 9190-888-899-9190. Thank you for letting me be part of the morning. Have a great rest of the meeting.